Hi, I'm Jim Aldred. I'm here at the Jabez Howland House at 33 Sandwich Street, and we're meeting with Peter Arenstam, the Executive Director of the John Howland Society. Peter, thank you very much for having me come in.
Happy to do it for you.
Now, I've been down here a couple of years ago for maybe a breakfast or
That was
together.
the Harlow House. They do.
The Harlow. I'm sorry, Harlow House.
Yep.
I'm sorry, kept it in the H's.
Happens all the time.
Tell me, what is the history behind this? This is one of the oldest, or the only house in town where a Mayflower Pilgrim lived. Is that correct?
Yes, the original house, and we're actually in the newest section of the house.
Okay.
The original house was built in 1667 by a house carpenter named Jacob Mitchell. He built it for he and his wife, and they only lived here for 2 years. But they sold it to Jabez Howland, who was the 8th son of John Howland and Elizabeth Tilley of Mayflower fame. John and Elizabeth had 10 children together, and Jabez was their 8th child. Jabez was a blacksmith here in town, and he bought the house from Jacob Mitchell, and he and his wife, Bethiah, lived in the house from 1669 until 1680.
Wow. Now, down the street, there's a Jabez corner.
Yes.
What is the significance of that?
Yeah, I think JB's Corner, as we call it here in Plymouth. So
okay.
I grew up here in Plymouth and pronounced it JB's Corner.
Sure.
I started working here, and they said we pronounce it Jabez. So that's the way
I'm obviously a drift in.
I pronounce JB's Corner and Jabez Howland House.
Right.
Both ways, but I don't think there's any.
Not the same family.
Jabez was not uncommon name.
Okay.
In the 17th century, so it may be related to some other Jabez.
Okay.
Or JB.
So tell me a little bit about the John Howland Society. When did that get started, and what's its goals?
Sure. The Jabez, the Pilgrim John Howland Society was founded in 1897 by a group of people who were all related to the Pilgrim John Howland. He, of course, was on the Mayflower, and the idea of the society is to perpetuate the history of and to celebrate the story of John Howland and the Mayflower.
Okay. That's right in the middle, toward the end, actually, the Victorian era.
That's right.
1897. I'm curious what got them all together to think they wanted to
Well, it's interesting. Bradford's Journal of Plymouth Plantation had been in a church in Boston during the American Revolution.
Old South.
It was taken from there to England and only returned to the United States in 1895. So there was a big upsurge in interest in the Pilgrim story around that time. Mayflower Society was founded in 1897, same year as the Howland Society. So it was all part of that upsurge of interest in the Pilgrim story.
Everybody heard about that, and they realized they're sitting in this trove of interest.
That's right.
Down here in
and people who knew they were related to these various pilgrims wanted to be able to celebrate that and tell that story.
Right. So back then, at that point in time, what was the situation just for this house? What was it?
Well, interestingly, we know who lived in this house from the first Jacob Mitchell to the last private owner. So the last private owner was a woman named Helen Holmes, who had inherited the house from her father. She lived part-time in Washington, D.C., if I remember correctly, and she sold the house to the Howland Society. One of the first things they did after incorporating was purchase this house. They had a plan. They knew it was the Howland house, or associated with the Howland story, and they wanted to save it. At the time, it was not in good repair. There was actually a livery stable in what's our parking lot right now, right next door, very close, old kind of rundown building.
Dilapidated, sure.
So their plan, the Howland Society's plan, included raising $2,000 to purchase the house, $2,000 to restore the house, and $1,000 to set up an endowment to take care of the house in perpetuity. That was their plan. They raised those funds and bought the house from Helen Holmes in 1912.
Wow. So it's amazing that it's maintained its character all these years. This section you said is the newest section. Looks old by itself. I'm not sure when it was when it was built.
Yeah, as I said, the original section was 1667.
Right.
And then other owners, as they lived here, of course, as you would with your own home, add on or change or modify to suit your needs while you're living here.
Right.
A family named the Churchills lived here in the early 1700s.
Yeah, that's an old name in town.
That's right. They had 10 children in their family. So the small house, the original house, which was really just 2 rooms, a downstairs room called the hall chamber and the upstairs room called the bedroom chamber, was not enough for this 10 children family. So they added the whole back of the house in about 1720. The room we're in was added about 1750, several years later, by another owner of the house. And then it maintained, obviously, this shape for a while. In the 1800s, it was a 2-family dwelling. A family lived downstairs and a family lived upstairs. And then finally, in 1912, as I said, the Howlands bought it from the last private owner.
Right, right. Go ahead.
The Howlands had a plan to renovate it. Ultimately, originally their plan was to have a caretaker in the house, and then people who might happen by and wanted to see it, he would show them around. That worked for a while. They engaged an architect named Sidney Strickland, a Boston architect, who at the time was also working with the Plymouth Plantation, the museum that had just come into being. And he was working with them to design houses and lay out the recreated town. He worked with the Pilgrim Society to renovate this building back to 3 different time periods. That early period, late 17th century, then early 18th century, and then mid 18th century here, so that a visitor today can see the difference and evolution of the house and of housing in general.
Right. That's the way everything, all these old houses are. They start out as a 2 or 4-room building, and then they get expanded on, I'm going to say willy-nilly, as they needed more space and the families grew. They added up and out and became a bit of a rambler.
That's exactly right. It's
Yeah.
John Daly.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's up to.
He wants to get into the second showing. Okay, so the Howland Society is involved with this house, and how do they come? People come and tour it if they want to come see it. What's the who do they contact?
Yeah, the house is open during the summer season from mid-June to the end of October, generally.
Okay.
And our hours of operation this year have been Wednesday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We require or request reservations so that it kind of keeps so people don't clump together and get a bunch of people in the house all at one time. And it's worked pretty well for us in these last 2 years. Reservations, you can either call the house 508-746-9590 or use our website pilgrimjohnhowlandsociety.org. And request a reservation for usually a time on the hour.
And I'll post a link for the Howland Society on the bottom of this video.